It's early 2020, and Ubisoft has just announced its plans for the brand new North American League. NA is about to get split up into United States and Canadian territories for the first time, and out of that Canadian division is about to spawn one of the most unlikely and unwavering comebacks that Siege will ever see. You can argue that the way the Canada division was handled was botched, but this story ultimately came out of it, so maybe it's not all bad. 4 teams get to go to this inaugural Canada Division stage, and a little team called Squires makes it through the qualifiers. Shima, Missio, Guns, Dot Dash, and some guy called Spiritz. I don't know, we'll get back to him later. They get signed to an org called Altiora before the season starts, and for reasons we'll get into later, that name is now dead to us. But this team places 3rd that stage, out of the 4 teams that were there, generally looking pretty lost, out of sorts, and unimpressive next to the likes of Mirage, who quickly become the standard setters for what majority Canadian Siege teams are meant to look like. So, Altiora decide to blow the whole thing up. Dot Dash leaves for a Mexican team, Shima and Missio get dumped for Sonar, Euphoria, Eskaa, and Penguin. They've come from all sides of the NA circuit, from US Challenger League and Tier 3 leagues to the underage scene. But this is where the core of Altiora truly starts to come together. Guns only plays 2 out of the 3 games played in Stage 2, and Penguin jumps to the active roster after turning 18 midway through. And this team moves from 3rd to 2nd in Stage 2 and qualifies for the Canadian finals against Mirage. This is a Mirage team from a completely different timeline, by the way. This one's got Flynn, Zilchi, Silent, and Quartz on it, and the only player still left in the modern day right now is Loading, so this game is essentially ancient history, but people still expect Mirage to win. The first time that this Altiora team trounces people's expectations was defeating this Mirage squad in the Canadian Grand Finals 3-0.
Flynn is gone, it's Silent in a 1v4, but the match breaks in favor of Altiora, and they're the best team in Canada.
Mirage simply woke up too late, played too structured. The Altiora guys were kind of running roughshod, and suddenly a lot of people start looking at this Altiora team a little bit differently. That win gets them a spot at the NASI 2020 closed qualifiers, which is a considerable step up in competition from teams that they faced back in the Canada division. Disrupt Gaming is there, OG Beast Coast, rent-free prior to getting picked up by XSET. The opponents are harsher, and so are the stakes. Altiora gets a first-round bye because of that Mirage win, so they take on Rent-Free, who just won US Challenger League, which I think a lot of people looked at USCL and assumed it was better than the entire Canadian division in the first place, but it comes down to an overtime match point do or die moment on map 3, but the Canadians get it done.
The plant starts now. It's down in behind the bomb chassis. He hops in. Spiritz with the triple kill. It's down to Thomas, but it doesn't matter. Rent-Free off the field. Canada does it. Altiora onto the finals.
And suddenly, all they have to do is defeat Beast Coast in a best of 5, and they're going to the 6 Invitational. I mean, it's Beast Coast. What do you think happened?
Working in tandem with one another, they've managed to take control of Cafe, and Rudy will go in one direction, but there's Spiritz up, and he'll pick up his 3rd kill. Sonar gets it, and the Kings of Canada will compete at the 6th Invitational.
In the span of just 3 months, Altiora goes from struggling in a subpar NA division to completely revamping their roster and qualifying for the biggest dance of the year. That's the kind of high I would want to ride for as long as I possibly could, because it's nuts to think that a team can have that kind of trajectory so quickly. But they're about to start getting gut punched. 2 prominent US division teams decide it's not worth it to keep on investing in Rainbow Six after the conclusion of the 2020 season and pull out of the league altogether. So the US and Canada divisions get merged into one collective NAL, and spots are granted to all 4 Canadian teams, assuming that they can make the move and financial stability to Las Vegas, Nevada. Mirage does manage to make this move work, and everyone assumes that Altiora is going to be following in their wake. They're even advertised as being in the league for the start of the year.
We are working very closely with Mirage and Altiora to have them join us in Las Vegas with more news to come on this transition.
And, well, no. They don't end up going. Altiora, the org, informs Ubisoft that they're completely stepping out of Rainbow Six, and because you need an org to support your team in the NAL, their former roster gets completely fucked out of a spot through no fault of their own. And as of December of 2021, Altiora, the organization, still has yet to pay their players around $40,000 or so in prize winnings. I heard a rumor their reason for pulling out was because Altiora received a sponsorship deal from a company that had issues with shooter games, so they dumped both their Siege and their Apex teams in rather quick succession to one another, but that's just a rumor, and at this point, it doesn't matter. Altiora is dead to us. This is the first really big hurdle that this team has had to worry about. Not only is their rightful spot in Tier 1 Siege yoinked from them, but there's no chance that Ubisoft will consider adding a 10th team to the league until after the 2021 season concludes, because they were informed with so little time before the start of the 2021 NAL that there's no real way to justify making that change until after the entire season is done. So all this team has left is an offer to join Challenger League instead, as well as the aforementioned 6 invitational spot. Now, the easiest way to make it back into the NAL would simply be to win NACL. I say simply, but that's kind of a hard task. Relegations still exist, so the winner of Challenger League will still go on to face the bottom tier team in the NAL, but it's only based upon Stage 3 performance, so this team's got some time to get their affairs in order. But SI that year unfortunately gets delayed 3 months due to the ongoing pandemic, so they just decide to pick themselves back up and press forward in Challenger League. And along comes Parabellum Esports. At the time, the only thing the Canadian org was involved in was Rocket League, but they had been looking to sign this team from Altiora since the conclusion of their contracts in February after watching them win the 6 Invitational qualifier. So they jump right in the fray, and they signed Penguin, Spiritz, Eskaa, KoolAid, and Louise. Sonar and Euphoria didn't come with the team initially, but were instead listed on the 6 Invitational roster, while the team itself opted to press on with Challenger League under 2 different players, because both Sonar and Euphoria, after the entire debacle of being dropped from Altiora and not being in the NAL any longer, more than likely did not want to continue in actual NAL competition because of this entire scenario. So there are 2 different rosters listed at this point, the one going to SI and the one playing in Tier 2. But then their CL campaign immediately has a monkey wrench thrown into the works because their coach Awkward has an investigation opened into his behavior, and he leaves the team the next day. And as if that wasn't already enough turmoil, just 3 games into Parabellum's stage, Louise gets caught in 4K using wireframe during a ranked match and is subsequently indefinitely banned from Siege the next morning. Things just keep going from bad to worse with each passing week. But with SI on the horizon, this isn't the time for this group of guys to give up. So in spite of the roster lock rules, because they had their SI roster already confirmed by Ubisoft, Parabellum gets permission to bring Sonar and Euphoria back early because there's still a fair amount of CL games left to be played. They even have to accelerate their Challenge League schedule to make sure they leave North America with enough time to settle in Paris for the Invitational. And by the 5th week of Stage 1, the whole ex-Altiora roster is finally back together again. In spite of all these circumstances, they placed 4th overall in their group in CL and just narrowly missed out on the playoffs that stage, which probably was a good thing because they have much bigger fish to fry at this point. They get put into Group B of the 2021 6 Invitational, alongside TSM, SSG, OXG, MIBR, Giants, Makers, and the eventual tournament winners, Ninjas in Pajamas. The toughest teams they've faced thus far on the biggest stage. It's an incredibly tall task for a lot of guys who've been playing the game for a long time but have never faced competition like this in their lives. But they're playing best of ones in the group stage, and they're coming in with considerably less pressure than most other teams. Like, they won a qual seemingly out of nowhere. Nobody expects anything of them. It takes a bit for them to warm up, but eventually they do. In groups, they go on a 3-game win streak, defeating NIP, SSG, and Giants all on the same day, which, in spite of 2 of those teams not really being considered top contenders, still turned a lot of people's heads.
You gotta drop the man. You can't quite get him there. It is. Swings through. Unbelievable clutch at the end there. Played it perfectly.
This gets them into the lower bracket of the playoffs, and the first team that they encounter is G2 Esports. But not the same G2 Esports that won 2 SIs in a row. A weakened, battered, confused G2 with lots of different players on it from the ones that won World Championships only years prior. And it genuinely wasn't a hot take to think that they'd lose to the Canadians. And, well,
he's got multiple kills to find and only 3 seconds to do it in. Spiritz gets that final kill. Parabellum, they advance through this lower bracket.
Honestly, losing their next game to Team Liquid isn't even that big of a disappointment. The Canadian upstarts just knocked off G2 and bagged 75 grand. That's further than most people thought that they would go, myself included. Nothing about that event was a loss for them at all. But still, it doesn't solve the main issue. This team is competing in Challenger League and not the NAL. And the only real way to fix that is to win out. Euphoria departs the team after SI, so KoolAid steps back onto the active lineup, who was a big part of Aerial Arise winning CCS Season 5, so he's absolutely worth his weight in gold. The team gets back to CL that summer, wins Stage 2 over some very game competition, but then decides to make another roster switch up just before the ultimate stage. letting Sonar go to Okami and picking up Melted from Wichita Wolves. It's one of those changes that makes it seem like there must have been a really serious issue going on behind the scenes. A team that just won a CL stage gave the impression that they had a working formula, but now Melted is on the team instead. He doesn't even play the same roles as Sonar, and initially it looks like it might be the wrong addition.
Melted, he's the last one alive, the last hope for PB in regulation, but on 1 HP he has to land the shots. Is he able to do it? No, he can't! He misses the pre-fire! All the bullets in the world, all the time at your disposal! How do you whip that, Melted? Aerial Arise taken in regulation in the most heartbreaking fashion I've ever seen.
We are now at a point where CL's Golden Boys have lost the first 3 games of the stage that decide whether they even go back to the NAL or not. And a lot of people mistakenly tweeted that they were out of the playoffs and were already too far gone. But most of us had not done the math properly. PB would need to win their final 2 games in regulation and get a little bit of tiebreaker help along the way to ensure that they were top 3 in their group. And thus, the miracle run began.
In comes the push. KoolAid hitting the deck, gets one. Eskaa another. KoolAid finishes one off before he goes down. And PB take round 11 flawlessly. Parabellum with a 7-4 win keep their playoffs hopes alive.
They made it to playoffs, but just as soon as they had, they immediately got sent down to the lower bracket and yet again were in a do or die scenario. But game after game after game, they were working their way through said lower bracket without dropping a single map. And all they had to do was win 1 more best of 3 and the year-long run through Challenger League would finally be complete.
The plant is going down, and Diaz and Wimpy, they were upstairs looking for the retake. The plant is going to be confirmed. He doesn't have any info to work off of. You can see with the way they're playing, and PB still has a drone. Melted takes out 1, and nearly the second, they both run out of ammo. But there's Spiritz. Parabellum are your Stage 3 Challenger League World Champions. They booked their ticket to Vegas and to the relegation match against XZ. They are 1 step away from completing the greatest Cinderella story Siege has ever seen.
So let's recap. Got screwed out of their NAL spot, had to investigate and release a coach, had a player banned for cheating, had to slog through a lower league to even have a chance to get back to where they should have been 9 months prior, and suddenly the only thing standing between them and capping off the storybook ending is an XZ team that most people have written off as a living joke. 1 best of 5 on LAN in Las Vegas with some of their parents and family members in attendance with them, and most of PB's been to LAN before, so that's not a disadvantage. All they have to do is win.
KoolAid now reassessing to retake from above. The sledge of creators is up there, and if they don't understand, the retake is going on. Just like that, KoolAid gets their attention and then turns his eyes towards the B-bomb site. Eskaa in on it as well. Down goes Filthy, Prod dropped, and Razor, the performer right now with 9 kills to his name, won't get more than that. Map 1 goes to the Canadian upstarts, and MVK is in, taking so much damage, so is Razor. MVK is down, leaving Razor's the last one alive, but Parabellum says, yeah, no thanks. It's 2-0 for Parabellum.
Don't be undisciplined.
I'm playing backside,
Yeah,
I'm holding freeze drop.
I'm just showing.
Lobby.
Yeah, just don't do anything, Zach.
Freezer are dead!
Nice.
I smoke freeze. Diffuser and freeze. I'm getting my kill. Yo, it's NVK.
But it's the man that we've talked
I ain't
about.
taking the
Just win the round, bro. I'm
not
gonna
taking
go
the
early.
chances.
I'm getting my kill, guys.
He's under fire. Parabellum relegate the set. Welcome to the NA League, boys.
I think you would be hard-pressed to find a story in CG Sports that is as incredible as this one is. Comebacks aren't anything new, like Penta's win over EG at SI and that reverse sweep comes to mind as one of the great ones, but this one had livelihood stakes on the line in a team that's always been considered young underdogs, finally flipping the script on everyone to reclaim territory that they honestly should have had from the beginning. At the NA Finals when they won that relegation game, I actually asked Pengu about how they kept their heads above water despite the tumult of 2021.
We felt like we belonged to be in Pro League ever since, like, you know, we were going to get the spot with Altiora. So when they did tell us, like, you know, we didn't have it anymore, or, you know, it wasn't happening, we were a little crushed, but we said, like, you know, we deserve it, or not we deserve it. We're good enough to take it, so let's go through CL and let's take it. Like, let's prove that, you know, we earned it. It wasn't just a gifted spot to us. So, I mean, we stuck with it, made sure that, you know, we fixed our issues. We had lots of issues, like lots of ups and downs with the team, but, I mean, we persevere, and I mean, I think our whole year will make a crazy story. So
yeah, dude, it's a crazy story. It's technically not over, but for Parabellum, 2021 is one for the history books. And even though Parabellum themselves are a small upstart org that doesn't even have a team that isn't their Rainbow Six one at this point, they're not exactly looking to get out of the scene for a big paycheck either. Kind of feel like I'm that Chancellor Palpatine meme right now.
We will watch your career with great interest.
Because we will. We're going to look at this Parabellum team that we've been following literally since their inception and hoping that they do big things now that they're finally back where they're rightfully supposed to be. Congratulations again to the boys. I can't describe how excited I am to see you in the NAL for the 2022 season. That's all from me. We are now in the midst of what's about to be a pretty brutal off-season. We've got the 6 Invitational qualifiers coming up over the next couple of weeks, and then SI itself in February, assuming it doesn't get delayed. But there's plenty of other stuff that I want to cover in the meantime while we wait for more stuff for SI to come around. So hit up my Twitch, my Twitter, and this YouTube channel for more in the coming days. Please and thank you. I'll see you later, or something.